The call came at 3:07 a.m. A nurse's voice, trembling but professional. Your father. Emergency room. Critical condition. I drove through the empty city with the engine screaming, streetlights slicing shadows across the windshield. The hospital reeked of bleach and despair, but it was his smell, burned flesh, metallic blood, that almost brought me to my knees. My father lay broken on the gurney, fingers twisted at unnatural angles, skin blistered raw, acid burns on both hands, the kind you don't forget once you've seen them in covert reports. His voice rasped when he saw me. "Son," each word was dragged through glass. "Your business partner. He came to the house." My chest tightened. What did he want? "Your server codes." A cough. "Said he'd hired a wet team, coming tonight to hit your house." When I refused, his eyes drifted to the IV dripping morphine. He used a car battery on me. Hours. I didn't flinch, didn't rage. I simply memorized his words, locked them into the vault of my mind. My partner had hired killers. He had tortured my father for information. And worst of all, he had forgotten. My nickname in the CIA wasn't earned behind a desk. Driving home, the night seemed quieter, too quiet. Every car that passed felt like a surveillance tale. Every shadow whispered intent. I replayed my father's words, dissecting each syllable. My business partner. The man who shook my hand daily, smiled at me across boardroom tables, toasted our victories with fine whiskey. Betrayal wasn't new to me. In the field, it was currency. But this was intimate. He hadn't struck me directly. He had gone through blood. My father, an old man who had nothing to do with codes or classified servers. It was a choice, a message. And in that moment, the message was clear. I was expendable. I didn't rage. Rage is sloppy. Rage leaves fingerprints. Instead, I went silent, calculating. I remembered the way he avoided my eyes yesterday during lunch. The offhand joke he made about security systems. The subtle shift of his tone when he asked how long I'd be out of town. At the time, it was nothing. Now, it was a blueprint of betrayal. I didn't go home that night, not yet. Instead, I pulled off into an abandoned lot and opened the laptop I kept hidden in the trunk. Military-grade firewall, unmarked hardware, untraceable nodes. Within minutes, I had access to his private communications. The records were damning. Messages encrypted, but not beyond me. Payments wired to names I knew, contract killers who owed me favors, once. Coordinates matching my house, timetables stamped for dawn. I scrolled through it all in silence, the way a surgeon studies a tumor before cutting it out. Every click tightened the noose around him, but not the way he thought. I closed the laptop, lit a cigarette I didn't need, and watched the smoke rise. I wasn't just uncovering betrayal. I was re-entering a part of myself I had buried the day I left the CIA. The part that knew patience, silence, and surgical revenge. By the time I flicked the cigarette into the gravel, I knew exactly what I'd do. Not violent, not bloody, not obvious. Something colder. Something permanent. Morning came and I arrived at the office as if nothing had happened. He was there, smiling too easily, his tie too neatly knotted. "Rough night?" he asked, feigning casual. I didn't answer. Instead, I slid an envelope across the desk. Inside, printed transcripts of his encrypted messages, account numbers, payment receipts. Proof. He froze. His eyes darted across the page, the color draining from his face with every line. "How?" his voice cracked. "How did you?" I leaned back, expression unreadable. "You hired amateurs," I said quietly. "I trained them." The silence that followed was thicker than smoke. His jaw trembled. His hands gripped the paper so tightly it tore. He had expected fear, panic. Instead, he faced something worse. Stillness. I didn't threaten him, didn't raise my voice. I simply pulled out a second folder. This one contained copies of everything, sent to federal authorities, rival corporations, and his family. By noon, I said, you won't have a company, a reputation, or a safe place to hide. He lunged forward, desperate. Wait, we can fix this, I stood, cutting him off with silence. My shadow loomed over his collapsing frame. You made a mistake, I said, my voice calm, even. You thought I was a partner. You forgot I was a ghost. And then I left him there, choking on the weight of a life unraveling. By evening, the news had broken. Investigations, frozen accounts. His name dragged across headlines like a carcass in the street. I didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction in victory, only silence. At the hospital, my father slept, breathing shallow but steady. I sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. I realized then, this wasn't about betrayal, not really. It was about memory, about the fact that men like my partner always forget that power isn't built on money or codes. It's built on what a man can endure, and what he refuses to forgive. I reached over, adjusted the blanket on my father, and stood. No pity, no tears, only clarity. As I walked out of the hospital, I whispered the truth to myself. He thought he could break me. He only reminded me who I am.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Subscribe now to Cheating Stories Insight World for more amazing stories.